So, hello and welcome to our academic vlog. This is for Heritage Studies, part of our archaeology course. My name is Mika van Eldijk. Behind the camera is Maurits Koelewijn. Behind me, behind this fence, is the airport Valkenburg, and on the other side, the Roman settlement of Valkenburg. And today we will be discussing how memory affects this place.
For our vlog, we decided to focus on how memory affects the conservation and accessibility of historical sites at Valkenburg. Our main concept of focus will be memory. How are the sites of the Romans remembered, and how is the airport remembered? And how do accessibility, conservation, and preservation play a role, and how do they affect the memory?
The story of Roman Valkenburg, or Praetorium Agrippina as it was known in Roman times, starts early in the 1st century AD. Situated along the Limes, it was a military headquarters located between the Roman forts of Matilo, current-day Leiden, and Forum Hadriani in modern Voorburg. In the year 40 AD, only shortly after its construction, the Praetorium was visited by Emperor Caligula while visiting the Lower Rhine region. A few decades later, during the Batavian Revolt, the fort was burned down and was rebuilt several times afterwards, the initial phase of occupation ending around 270 AD. It was reconquered and refortified by Emperor Constantius in the mid-4th century, but was eventually abandoned again around the beginning of the 5th century. Nowadays, the fort is largely invisible, hidden underneath the modern city centre of Valkenburg. But throughout the past century, extensive archaeological excavations have taken place on the site and have uncovered a large amount of information concerning the fort, as well as a nice selection of artifacts. Amongst other things, a large amount of Samian ware, also known as terra sigillata, was found, as well as writing tablets, skeletal remains, and various military objects. Another interesting find was a wooden wine barrel that once contained wine from the personal vineyard of Caligula, archaeologically proving that Caligula did indeed visit the fort. Some of these finds are nowadays displayed within the Toren Museum, a small museum built in the same location as the fort once stood. Unfortunately, however, during our visit, the museum was completely closed, so here's some random footage we shot while standing outside and some pictures we stole from the internet. However, Roman Valkenburg is not solely comprised of just the fort. As Vicus, an unplanned civil settlement, along with the cemetery, developed towards the southeast of the fort. Directly to the south, a smaller military complex was located, most probably a supply base for the larger fort. Another well-documented feature from Roman Valkenburg is the Roman road, leading towards the neighboring fort of Matilo. This one especially plays a large part in preserving the memory of Roman Valkenburg.
The airport Valkenburg was built in 1939 by the Dutch as a preparation for the war. Since then, it has known a number of owners. In 1940, the Netherlands was invaded by Germany while the airport was still under construction. The Germans continued the build of the airport during the war. The airport was also used as an Allied food drop in 1945. And after the Netherlands was freed from the Germans, the British Royal Air Force used the airport, repairing it as well. The Netherlands got control back when the RAF left, and in October 1947 the Dutch Royal Navy got control of the airport and gave it the name it still holds today, Marine Vliegkamp Valkenburg. The airport was closed in 2006 and plans were made to demolish the airport and build houses. Only a few hangars and a control tower were to remain, and in 2017 parts of the airport had already been demolished.
The memory of Roman Valkenburg is a tricky one. While probably no direct descendants of those that occupied the Roman fort still live in the area, the Roman sites are still seen as part of the public memory. Due to the fact that the Romans lived in roughly the same area, they are seen as the first inhabitants of the city. Very little people, however, have any direct idea of the memory of the Roman site. These are all told to them later on, by visiting the museum and reading about the site. They sort of claim the Roman remains as their own, seeing as they share the same area of occupation. Quite a few things are done to preserve the memory of Roman Valkenburg. Even though a major part of the site itself is located underground, there are still objects and buildings commemorating the Roman occupation. The Roman milestone and road being clear examples of this. Recent vandalism and graffiti, however, has destroyed part of them, giving the impression that not everyone identifies with Roman Valkenburg. Information plaques are also located within the city, as well as near the Roman road. The latter one, however, is located near a modern highway, not an area with a large amount of people, making its visibility not the best. A last thing to look at is the Torii Museum. While it is located on top of the old Roman fort and displays a fair amount of the finds, its accessibility is not that great. It's only open for 1 day a week for only 3 hours. A visit on appointment, however, is also possible. But this does not really encourage the preservation and remembrance of Roman Valkenburg, seeing as only those with a large amount of interest in the origin of Valkenburg will visit the museum. Casual passerbys are excluded in this ways. This is, however, largely due to the fact that the museum is operated solely by volunteers, simply not having the resources to open the museum for longer periods, despite their best intentions to do so.
The memory of the airport remains in the form of the control tower and the last remaining hangars, and until September 2018, the airport has housed the musical Soldaat van Oranje. But this is not the only way the Second World War is remembered in Valkenburg. In the center of the town, at the church, there's a monument to the fallen citizens that had died at and around the airport in 1940. However, since the airport is partly demolished, it is obviously an act against the conservation of the airport. Next to that, the airport is not free to access, which makes it difficult for people to be part of the history.
A few key differences in terms of memory can be observed between the airport and the Roman site. Less personal connections are a likely cause. Many of the inhabitants are direct descendants of those living through the horrors of the Second World War, and have had the memory of this tragedy passed down. The identification with the Roman layers of Valkenburg is a far less personal one. Probably none of the current inhabitants has a great-great-great-great-great-grandfather that occupied the Roman fort. Due to the archaeological importance of the Roman site, however, it is listed as an official heritage site. While some of the memorial sites from World War II are also official heritage, the airport is a bit of an exception, probably due to the fact that the airport remained in use after the Second World War. This can clearly be observed in its accessibility. The Roman sites are accessible to everyone, although not always, but the airport is not accessible to anyone. Thus, no information plaques or similar things to keep the memory alive are presented on the airport, as opposed to the Roman sites where several of these plaques can be observed.
In conclusion, we believe that the Roman Museum should have more funding so it can be open more of the time. We also believe that the monuments should have better maintenance. We also find it important that the rest of the airport is not demolished.
So, this was our academic vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, ask us in real life, and see you next time.